prisoners left in solitary confinement until the day they die, to other prisoners who have escaped multiple times. Today, let's take a look at some of the scariest and most dangerous prisoners in the world. Starting off this countdown, we have Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson was an English criminal who gained the title the most violent prisoner in Britain, and Britain's most notorious prisoner. He was first arrested for armed robbery, and he served 7 years for this. Upon his release, he had a career in bare-knuckle boxing. Then, in 1988, he was convicted of conspiracy to commit another robbery. However, this time, when he went back to jail, he became a more violent inmate. In fact, there were multiple times where he took other inmates hostage. He even would fight guards and fellow prisoners. As a result, he was moved 120 times. That's right, 120 times. Nowadays, he spends his time in solitary confinement, which he will until the day that he dies. Moving on to number 9, we have the dating game killer. Now, this guy gets his name because you probably know him, okay? He's notorious. But while police were out looking for him, he actually appeared on the show The Dating Game. This was in 1978 during the midst of his murder spree. In fact, the dater on the show actually chose him, but when they met afterwards, she said that she got this bad feeling around him, and they never actually went on a date, which, good for her for trusting her gut because, you know, she would have ended it up. This guy would often toy with his victims. He would strangle them before they lost consciousness, then revive them, and then repeat this process over and over before eventually actually taking their life. He was convicted of taking the lives of at least 5 women, but police believe that his murder count is actually way higher. Moving on to number 8, we have Richard Reed. In 2003, Richard Reed was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences and 110 years with no parole. Reed, also known as the Shoe Bomber, attempted to detonate a shoe bomb in 2001 while aboard American Airlines Flight 63 that was going from Paris to Miami. In 2006, The Telegraph actually wrote a detailed article about his life in solitary confinement. They said that for 23 hours of the day, Reed was locked in his small cell. The cell is equipped with motion sensors, video cameras, and there's always someone paroling his cell. Every half an hour, he's checked in on by the guards through a small window in his door. His meals are also passed through like a small slit in the door, and he has to eat in his cell. And that's because they think that he's super dangerous, so they always just have to check in on him, and he's never leaving that cell. And at number 7, we have Richard Lee McNair. Richard Lee McNair received 2 life sentences after being convicted of murder, attempted murder, and burglary. Now, the reason why he's on this list is because he managed to escape prison not just 1 time, but 3 times. The first was in 1988 when he used lip balm to slide his handcuffs off. Then in 1992, he escaped again. And then in 2006, he escaped again by mailing himself out. Like, come on, you'd think that after all these, times of escaping, they'd keep an extra eye on him, but no. To this day, he is called the Master Escapist, and he's actually in a Supermax prison now. Moving on to number 6, we have Charles Harrelson. Charles Harrelson was an American hitman and organized crime figure, and you might recognize him because he's actually Woody Harrelson's dad. Isn't that crazy? I think so. Charles went to prison for the first time when Woody was only 7 years old. It's said that he's responsible for the death of at least 20 people. In 1979, that's when Charles committed his biggest crime of all time. He took out a federal judge by the name of Judge John H. Wood Jr. He was the first federal judge to be killed in the 20th century. He was paid $250,000 to do this hit. It was because a drug dealer was about to be sentenced by this judge who was known as Maximum John. He was known for giving really harsh and long sentences to drug dealers. So Charles was sent in to knock him off, but he got caught. He was in solitary confinement until he was 69 years old when he died from a heart attack. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Man in the Iron Mask. The Man in the Iron Mask is the name given to an unidentified prisoner arrested in 1669 or 1670. He was imprisoned during the reign of King Louis XIV of France. Now what's scary is that this prisoner's identity was kept a secret. To this day, we don't even know who it was. He was forced to wear a mask that blocked off his face. Some say he wore a black velvet mask, Others reported it was a full iron mask. Apparently, the guards were ordered to shoot this man if he ever took off the mask. On top of that, he was kept in solitary confinement with double doors. There's like this huge conspiracy that he was like a public figure in the time, and that if anyone found out that he, you know, was in jail and did the deeds that he did, that it would be a huge uproar. So they were like, no, we're keeping it top secret. He's always wearing this mask. Moving on to number 4, we have Thomas Silverstein. Thomas Edward Silverstein was an American criminal jailed for armed robbery in 1978. But while in prison, he committed a number of other crimes. In 1983, he killed a prison officer who he stabbed multiple times. Then he took the lives of 2 inmates. As a result, he had to be detained in a specially designed cell at the ADX Florence Federal Penitentiary in Colorado. In fact, he was considered the most violent prisoner in America. He also was referred to as America's most isolated man. In fact, he was considered so dangerous that he got transferred to a federal prison in Atlanta. There, he was confined by a 6 by 7 foot cell, and he was in constant surveillance. In fact, they never turned off the light in his cell because they always wanted to keep an eye on him. He is said to have served the longest term in solitary confinement in the federal penitentiary system. He eventually died in prison at the age of 67. And at number 3, we have Eileen Weros. Eileen Weros is often referred to as the damsel of death, and she is responsible for taking the lives of at least 7 men. She would always claim that it was self-defense, but later pleaded guilty to all the murders. Basically, she would kill them, rob them, and then drive home in their cars. In fact, she was named America's first female serial killer. Now, Eileen was placed in solitary confinement for quite some time, but then she grew really paranoid. She thought that people were spitting in her food or that she was being attacked by a sonic weapon. As a result of this, she actually wanted the court to hurry up with her death sentence. She's like, I can't wait to die. She passed away on October 9th of 2002 by lethal injection. Moving on to number 2, we have the Unabomber, aka Ted Kazinski. And he was responsible for mailing a number of bombs to just innocent people. Apparently, Ted was a very, very smart individual. He skipped 6th grade, has an IQ of 167, and went to Harvard. And he used that to do bad. Ted was responsible for sending 16 homemade bombs in the mail that killed 3 individuals and injured 23. As a result, he was charged with 3 counts of homicide and was sentenced to 8 lifetimes in prison. According to a fellow inmate, Ted was described as being really, really weird. Apparently, he wouldn't even go outside when he was allowed to. He spent 24 hours of his day locked away by will. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Robert Mosley. Robert Mosley is considered Britain's most dangerous prisoner. Mosley was originally convicted for murder, but while in prison, he took the lives of 3 more people. That got him placed in solitary confinement. In 1977, Mosley decided to hold one of his inmates hostage. He ended up torturing him for 9 hours before cracking his head open and killing him. And there's also a rumor that he actually ate some of the brains. As a result, he was deemed the real-life Hannibal Lecter. Alright folks, that's all for today's video. If you want to see a part 2, then let me know in the comments below. And you know the drill, while you're down there, smash that like button, obviously subscribe to my channel. I've been your host, Lindsay Ivan. Stick around for some bloopers, and I'll show you when I show you. Bye. Sorry, I gotta take this off. Now it's getting hot. It's getting hot in here. Most dangerous prisoners. Prisoner, doctor. Okay. Charles Bronson was an English Charles Bronson was an English criminal. Oh man, my back is always. Oh man. Okay. The first time Woody's father went to prison was when he was only. The first time when Woody's father went to prison was when he was just 7 years old. No, when Woody was 7 years old. His father wasn't 7 years old. God.